All right, everybody. Good Monday morning to y'all. Today is January 20th, or the 29th of After Yule in the Shire Reckoning calendar. We have a very special show for you guys today. As always, we are doing a co-stream. Myself, the Phoenix, who streams stuff mainly about Lord of the Rings for 5e, the RPG system. But we also have the Kindly Cleric, who is the wonderful streamer and full-time dungeon master, runs all sorts of systems and runs some pay-to-play professional games. Kindly Cleric, do you mind giving us a little bit more about yourself?
Hey, well, yeah, I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much to Phoenix for agreeing to co-stream with me, and excited to talk today about some of the several amazing things that we got going on. We're going to talk a little bit about our game tonight that we're actually playing, and we're starting a campaign through Moria, so I'm super excited about that. But yeah, Kindly Cleric, you can check us out at kindlycleric.com and TheKindlyCleric.com. Excuse me, you have to have the behind it, but. Phoenix, as always, amazing co-host and such a wealth of knowledge about Lord of the Rings and Lord of the Rings 5e, and just an all-around. I've come to know that you're just an all-around awesome person, Phoenix. So,
well, thank you. It's been a friendship forged in the heart of the mountain. Strong as iron. And it's
strong as iron, deep as the earth.
Yeah, and it's one of the things I like about you, David, besides that you are an avid Tolkien enthusiast such as myself,
Yes.
that's always exciting to find someone that I don't have to restrain my enthusiasm with.
You don't have to hide your nerd flag.
Yeah, just like, oh,
yeah.
you like Tolkien? Yeah, I've perused the token.
I've perused the token. I may know some things.
Was that JRJ token or RJJ token?
Right, yeah. Let's get the. Yeah. Who are you speaking of?
Yeah. So one of the other things I really like about the Kindly Cleric is you're just an all-around, like, personable, down-to-earth,
Aw.
straightforward person. And, one of the things I've noticed streaming on the various platforms and watching various platform streamers, some of them really play up stuff to get certain views or play up stuff for their audience. I never got that impression from you. It's always been a conversation between someone who feels passionately about tabletop RPGs and someone who just wants to connect with other folks with similar passions, which is so nice to find, because it from the very moment I first watched your stream, I was like, this seems like somebody I could have a conversation with, not somebody who has a pedestal and is looking down upon the little folk.
I love that. Thank you. I think that is life mission coming to fruition, because yes, being a streamer or being an entertainer, I guess would be the right term. People always ask me, like, what do you do for a living? I'm a full-time dungeon master. Like, how do you say full-time dungeon master to like 90% of the population? I think it's just like, I'm an entertainer, right? Like, yeah. I'm an online entertainer. And then it sounds like you're in a completely different industry that people would know about online, and then you have to
you're a content creator and a content facilitator.
Asterisk, not on OnlyFans. But yeah, amazing. I thank you so much for those kind words, and I feel the same way about you and about the content of your page. And I think we're both we're both humans just trying to figure out this cool stuff. So so that being said, as we take the journey of friendship together through Tolkien, let's jump into our quote this morning. Yeah, from Tolkien.
Yeah. So first off, before we get to that, let us officially welcome you all to
Yes.
Middle Earth Mondays
Yeah. Oh yeah.
with our title sequence. We're still working out. Beautiful. Beautiful.
As soon as you said, well, our title sequence, I pushed it, and then I was like, oh crud, she didn't push it. So
Okay. You know what? No one's going to be watching both streams at the same time unless
It's true.
I mean, you guys can if you want to, have them both up. Give us views for both streams. That's appreciated too. But no one will notice the delays
lag.
between the two.
Yeah, totally. By the way, if you're on my Discord right now, do go head over and give the Phoenix a follow. It's Phoenix with a 3 and a 0, correct, Phoenix? Is that
Yeah, it's the ThePh03n1x because I've had the username The Phoenix for a long time, and every once in a while I'll come across a platform where someone who is very inactive has taken the regular spelling of it, and it's like, just delete your account, please.
I will say that the 3 and the 0, that's the most 90s thing of all time. Is just that's amazing.
You know what? That's where I got it from actually, is because way back in the day, you would spell things like you spell like the word empty with a 3 at the beginning because you were edgy.
Yeah, because you were trying to be the edgelord. Yes,
Yeah.
110%. I know exactly what that's like, but
Call
awesome.
back to my emo era. All right, so let's start out this morning with a quote. And today's quote comes from The Return of the King from the chapter Many Partings. I felt that this was a adequate quote just because of what's going to be happening to us in, how many hours is that? 9 hours?
In 9 hours.
In 9 hours, we're going to be taking a journey of our own. So without further ado, the road goes ever on and on, out the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, let others follow it who can. Let them a journey new begin, but I at last with weary feet will turn towards the lighted inn, my evening rest and sleep to meet.
Well said. Well said. I love that they grabbed a hold of that theme for the movies when they wrote
The song.
the road. Yeah, the road goes up when Howard Shore is it Howard Shore or Henry?
No, was it Billy? Wait,
I don't know.
was it Billy Boyd that wrote that one? Because I know that he composed a couple songs.
He maybe it may, you know what, it may be. I can look it up in the in the thing here, but
We have the
but yeah, the thing.
technology.
We have the technology, but yeah, I love that they pulled that as a theme to compose around because it really does sort of encapsulate the at least the Hobbit's journey
Hmm.
of what it is to as Bilbo says very prominently in the films, and they repeat several times. You have to be careful, Frodo. The road. It's something along the lines of I'm approximating, but something along the lines of the road is swift. And if you don't watch,
Yeah,
it may.
watch where your feet land.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is an approximation of one of the things that Bilbo says to Frodo in terms of the wide world,
Hmm.
which Bilbo would know. He just stepped out for a little bit and wound up fighting a dragon
Yeah.
and yeah, all that kind of
Well,
stuff.
and we
So
have this, so this, whatever you want to call it, poem, song, whatever rendition you want to say, we
hmm
actually have three versions of it, if I remember. And I think that this one that I just read was the third version. But I think that the first version started in the Hobbit books.
oh, okay.
And the wording of them changes a little bit, but it goes from like the very first edition, if I remember correctly, was something to the effect of, starting a journey, which Bilbo was starting.
Yep.
The second edition was kind of the continuation of the journey, and then this final
hmm
one is recognizing the end of your own journey and that it's the
mm
beginning of the journey of other folk,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is, I just love the transformation of it and how
Yeah.
it's how it feels like, even though it's a poem, that you've traveled along this journey with the subject of the poem,
Yeah.
and have finally, gone to the end of it and feel a little bit of sorrow at the end of their journey, but also hope, because the
Yeah.
journey is continuing on for others and beginning anew for others. And in various forms of media, we see the journey continue on, and evolve, as we follow different stories in the Tolkien universe.
Yeah, that's true. It's so true. And I think journeying. I think it's so funny that they have in the 5e campaign that we're going to be playing tonight. It's so funny that in Lord of the Rings 5e from Free League that they have a journeying phase. That it is part of and it's baked into most of what Tolkien did. It's that it's that uh, traveling across a large country. It's that seeing all the things. I mean, Tolkien would go down to every root and branch and rock in order to help describe the beautiful countryside, because he loved his native home of England, because he fought and almost died for it. I'm sure that there's a lot of that. Part of it is that you agree to go in the journey, and then it becomes the drama, right? It becomes the epic sweeping moments. And as someone who I try to get around and travel as much as possible. I completely agree with it. The traveling itself becomes the vehicle by which a lot of life's really interesting things happen, and we get to travel outside of our little insulated world, as hobbits tend to be quite
Yeah.
insulated, and into the larger narrative of life.
Well, and I would 100% agree. So it's, I think most people, now this is getting a little philosophical,
we are
but
we're moving into philosophy
but
on this show.
I think that most people approach life as, you know, you're constantly traveling from one point to another point.
Yeah.
It's uh, from your starting point to your destination.
Yeah.
And the destination is always the goal in mind. It's always about, okay, we need to get to the city because we had to go to the theater, wherever you're going. And we're constantly focused on the destination part.
Yeah.
And we don't, and I get why, we have a lot of stuff going on in our life. The technology that has developed over the past even 100 years or 200 years has really lent itself to a more lessen the travel time, streamline the time and the paths by which you can get to your destination quickly, to maximize the efficiency of your time in a day. And in Tolkien, I like how you connected it to his time as a soldier, because if we think about back then, back when he was a soldier, getting to the destination was probably not full of hope, I guess. Kind of like with Frodo and Sam going to Mordor. It's not a place you want to go, but it's a place you have to go.
Right.
And so on that destination, on that journey to your destination, you take the time to appreciate things more so because it might be the last time you get to take a journey somewhere. It might be the last time you get to appreciate everything. And so, you do stop to smell the roses. You do stop to, watch the birds sing, because it's about appreciating the world around you with that final destination in mind. And that's getting a little sentimental, philosophical.
No, it's good. It's good. I like it. Definitely within the purview of Tolkien and his journeys and such. I'm sure a lot of that leaks out into his saga and epics. Hey, Magic. Hey, Freds. Glad to have you guys along with us on the road today. Fantastic. Okay, let's jump into this week in Middle Earth, yeah?
Yeah. Today in Tolkien. All right. So let's start off. We're actually going to jump back a little bit, a few days for context, because I think that the context here is important because of what's happening this week in the world of Arda. So on January 17th, so 3 days ago, the Fellowship comes to Caris Galadon. And this is actually the city of the Galadrim in Lothlorien. This is that beautiful tree city that we see in the movies that Galadriel and Celeborn rule from, I should say. And this is the evening that the Fellowship comes to Caris Galadon. Now the Fellowship kind of gets boring from here on out. The rest of this entire week, the Fellowship is just resting in Lothlorien, which is, fair.
After their ordeal in Moria, that would totally make sense, right? They had quite a time as Gandalf makes his exit from the Fellowship of the Ring, a lot going on. I would be resting for the entire week as well.
And they, exercise-wise, they probably got a fair share of running about in Moria, probably not a whole lot of rest, as we kind of discussed last week. And then, an interesting note, sorry, this is just a small aside, but in the latest Lord of the Rings 5e supplement, which covers the realms of the Three Rings, when they talk about Lothlorien, they talk about the loss of time in this realm, and how, in any elven realm, it's easy to lose track of time, but specifically Lothlorien, you could think you're there for a few days and it actually turns out to be a month. Just an interesting mechanic that the lore master gets to decide how long the fellowship stays in Lothlorien. Like the fellowship could be like, yeah, we just want to stay overnight, but it's not up to them at all.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, and it's very interesting. Like, when you take a look at they talk about this quite a bit in The Hobbit. It's interesting the difference between the elves in The Hobbit and the elves in Lord of the Rings. Tolkien is definitely wanting to present a more serious elf, in the Lord of the Rings. But in Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, it's like, oh yes, they're out in the field making merry and playing songs, and they'll dance like this for seasons on end and years, and they're caught up in the beauty of all creation, which is a really great thought until it's like, no crap, this ring's going to destroy the world. We should probably stop dancing for 5 seconds and help out.
Do you think my flower crown will appease Sauron?
And it's so funny, like that as just a glimpse into like elven world. The fact that sorry, my dogs are coming through my curtain back there. But just the fact that they're usually outside. My dogs are usually outside, but it's like it's below freezing here in Georgia, which is the craziest thing. But yeah, this disconnectedness of the elves, right? Like the like this is just a blip on their radar, of the amount of things. Yes, the darkness is bad. Yes, it means difficult things for all of Middle Earth. But in reality, it's hey, stop that. But the reality is that it's moving into the elves having to deal with. There's sort of a stopwatch on evil here. You know what, like that, or a countdown.
Well, and they finally have to recognize, because for elves, all the other, the mortals, men, dwarves, hobbits, they're a speck in the wind. Their lifespan is meaningless, and kind of like Ents. They've got such long lifespans that they're like, oh yeah, let's rest for the next 500 years.
Right.
They don't really grasp the concept of time like mortals do. And with Sauron, it's finally like, oh, we can't just rest around for years and years. There's actually, things happening quickly, and we have to act quickly for once.
Yeah. And it's so funny that they're like, okay, well, the darkness is here, and we haven't been able to do much with it, so we're just going to go back to Valinor. We'll see you later, guys.
They're like, good luck with that. We're going to go.
We're out.
I think I missed my boat.
Right? So anyway, fun stuff, and I don't blame the Fellowship for resting in Galadon.
No. While the Fellowship is resting, there's two things that are happening this week in Arda. The first of which, Saruman hears the Fellowship survived Moria. Thinking that they would have succumbed to, the Balrog or the orcs. And he decides to send a company of Uruk to intercept them. This company of Uruk is sent out January 18th, and they end up reaching Moria 4 days later on January 22nd, where they gather even more orcs to them. And then 2 days after they arrive in Moria, they capture Gollum. And then Saruman sends reinforcements. And then they become a group of about 180 Uruk and Orcs, which is, it doesn't sound like a whole lot, but if you think about it against a company of 8 people, it's a little more intense. So then one other thing that was happening this week, so on January 23rd, Gandalf decides to pursue the Balrog to the peak of Celebdil, where they decide to continue on their epic fight. And 2 days later, Gandalf casts down the Balrog and passes away. And Gandalf's body lies on the peak of Celebdil, and the endless stare in Khazad-dûm is destroyed.
Yeah. This is of course all going on in the book. It definitely makes mention to it only after we find out that Gandalf. I don't think they reveal that until Gandalf comes back in the Two Towers, do they?
No. I actually just started my reread of The Fellowship just a day ago, but I haven't gone there that far quite yet. But they don't mention anything because how would we know, right? Until Gandalf rejoins the company, we have no idea anything that was happening with him. We thought he was lost to the depths of Moria.
And it's so funny that that's Tolkien's dramatic, epic thing taken over at that point of sort of the and Gandalf is gone forever. Wink, wink to everybody who knows that what Gandalf is and who Gandalf. Because up until the Two Towers, we didn't have much of an idea of what Gandalf was. We just knew he liked fireworks and that he had a lot of knowledge of things, right? Mm-hmm. And then after the Two Towers, we kind of get more of a broader, look into what Gandalf is and his. His fight with the Balrog here is sort of almost a christening of sorts of sort of the character that we would come to know as Gandalf the White, mm-hmm. that he's more than just a hunched over old man that happens to lead Frodo and Bilbo in their in their world, but that he is something more. He is he is not of this world.
And because as far as because the Lord of the Rings books is mainly based from a Hobbit perspective, and when we talk about the Hobbit's perspective of Gandalf, he's the Grey Pilgrim. He comes in every once in a while, talks to the children. He's, quite entertaining to the children. Talks about was it Old Took that he was buddies with?
Gerontius, the Old Took, yes.
Yeah. Talks about, because for a while, after the Old Took died, he didn't display his fireworks for a while until Bilbo's 111th birthday.
Right.
That's basically what people knew him as. They kind of knew that he was a troublemaker, a disturber of the peace, if you will.
A disturber of the peace, yes.
Yeah. He led Bilbo away. That was no good, bad on the Grey Pilgrim kind of stuff. But can you imagine if his fight with the Balrog would have occurred on the outskirts of the Shire or something like that? What would they have thought of this, pilgrim this old man who they probably, I imagine, swatted on the nose once or twice.
Right, 110%. I think the interesting part of Gandalf is, Tolkien being a historian at nature, and ultimately also sort of involved in the epic poems. Wrote Gandalf very much to sort of favor the kind of identity of Odin, where Odin is said in Norse mythology to come to this world. Yes, he is a god,
Mhm.
but he wraps himself in this guise of being an old man, an old helpless man,
Mhm.
so that he can sort of he can help people. He can do things behind the scenes, and so Tolkien, picking up on this, sends this, basically this, for all intents and purposes, this angelic warrior being into the world, as this old gray man who just happens to be kind of quirky,
Yeah.
and everybody's like, oh, okay, Gandalf knows some things, and Gandalf does fireworks, and you're right. Strictly from a Hobbit perspective, this was basically just the party guy, you
Yeah.
know?
No, he was just, the weird, uncle with
Yeah,
with
no,
the
totally.
with the firecrackers. And
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, Gandalf's original mission from Iluvatar, when he was sent as Gandalf the Grey, was basically to rally the people of Middle Earth against the Shadow, right?
No, yeah, as I recall, it came at a time in which, in Middle Earth, in which it was just after, um, Morgoth had kind of been captured and done away with, and Sauron was sort of taking the reins of leadership here,
Mhm.
and as I recall, he is sent into the world to rally humans, rally any of the species of Middle Earth against the Shadow. I'm trying to remember what the time frame was that he actually came into the world, according to the thing. But I'm going
If
to
I
look that up while you're talking.
remember, and I don't entirely remember, but I know that Sir Dane, I think, was around at that time and had met him in Lindon. And
Yeah,
I think it was either the end of the Second Age or beginning of the Third Age, if I remember correctly.
yeah.
But I don't know, and this is just a theory off the top of my head. But
Hmm.
I wonder if the Astari wouldn't have been sent to Middle Earth more than once. Because there's nothing to say necessarily
Yeah.
that, maybe they're the SWAT team that Ilvata sends in every once in a while. He's like, go, go, go.
Yes. Um, Okay, after the Valar discovered the primeval elves at Cuivinnen, Aloran was sent there as one of the five guardians to guard the elves from the forces of Melkor. Right. So he was sent originally to guard the elves against Melkor. It is
Oh,
unclear how long he remained, or if he accompanied the Eldar in the Great Journey. But it is said that he loved the elves, and throughout his early life, he walked unseen amongst them, or wore a fana that appeared like an elf. In other words, a guise that looked like an elf, and he sent them fair visions in their hearts that made them wiser. Throughout their distance, he followed the example of Niana, taking pity on the sorrows of the children of Iluvatar and driving those who listened to him out of despair.
okay.
It is possible that Gandalf, as Aloran, came to Middle Earth in the Second Age, while Galadriel dwelt now. under the trees of the Greenwood the Great. Olorin once had a conversation with her. It is possible that that this was just after the year 1200, but it is said only the wise could say, who are now gone, could attest to the truth of this conversation.
Okay, so from what I'm hearing, it sounds like he might have been in, well, I say Middle Earth, in Arda, like during was it called the Years of the Trees?
Yeah, the years of the trees. Yep. Yeah, interesting.
So
Uh,
then
yeah.
I had just trying to summarize some of the stuff you mentioned there. So it sounds to me like he came during the Years of the Trees, stayed for a while, and might have gone back for a bit and then came back.
Yeah, so it does say that he was there, he was walking amongst the elves, and that he had a conversation with Galadriel. And then it says, during the Third Age, when Sauron's dark spirit of malice was increasing over Middle Earth, the Valar chose the Istari missionaries from among the Maiar to go to Middle Earth and help the people. Manwë selected Olorin, who at first did not wish to go, as he feared Sauron. Oh. However, Manwë said that it was all the more reason that he should go. Furthermore, so that brings another depth and gravity to Gandalf that I absolutely love. That he was like, listen, guys, I don't know that this is the right one for me. And they're like, okay, well, the fact that you're afraid means that you should go. And like almost like the I got voluntold that I was going to do this.
Yeah, like you understand the assignment.
Aloran submitted to the will of Manwë and departed Valinor to Mithlond in the year TA 1000. He
Okay.
arrived shortly after two of the other Istari, Karumo and Awindil. About the same time, the Necromancer appeared in Mirkwood. Like the other wizards, he took the shape of an old man. He was robed in gray. Yeah, so it looks like he comes in the Second Age, and then it looks like turn around and he's there at 1000, fighting against Sauron.
Okay, so yeah, so he did come to Arda multiple times. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
There you go.
I'm
we know that stuff now. You guys are learning with us.
Yeah, we're more educated than we were an hour ago. Brilliant. No, that's awesome. And God, so with Gandalf then having his mission, being scared of Sauron, which Ilvat was like, yeah, you should be. And that's actually probably one of the sole reasons that that Gandalf was able to succeed, was because, like, I'm just kind of theorizing. So if you were an Istari sent to Middle Earth and you had no fear of Sauron, one of two things would happen in my head. First is you wouldn't care. Maybe you're a blue wizard doing God knows what in the East. And you're like, oh,
kind of completely. They did kind of completely go off course. Mess up the mission. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
So you could be like a blue wizard. Who's scared of Sauron? He's but a trifle to our power. Let's go. Build sand castles out in Ruin. Or you could be like Saruman, who's like, I can take him.
Totally.
This guy's not so scary. I can trick him so that I can gain more power. So the fact that Gandalf was scared of Sauron is Ilúvatar is a so smart because
Yes.
he's like, this guy's bad and we need to address it, and I need to get more people scared of him so that we
Right.
can, fear attack him.
Yes. Yes. Uh, I love that. I love that. And Eru winds up sending him out in that way. So, okay, fantastic. I love that. Can I talk about the on Earth
Yeah,
things that happened this week in Middle Earth?
yeah.
This week in Middle Earth, as it appears on Earth, although it is an alternate history. Anyway,
This week in
the
in
Fourth Age.
the fourth age, the seventh age,
Hey, listen.
the years of man.
The years of man. The Fourth Age was not supposed to come to a close before the tour, before the Dagur Dagorath. So I think we have not reached the end battle just yet. So I think we're good. Although with all the signs going
Oh
on
God.
nowadays, I think we're getting close. Anyway, January 20th, 2010, Cubicle 7 announces the forthcoming release of the One Ring, the Lord of the Rings role-playing game. Yeah, so Cubicle 7 originally sets out to create the One Ring, which we're going to be playing tonight, although not the system, the One Ring, which is a fantastic system, by the way, but something a little bit more that everybody else kind of knows a little bit better, the Lord of the Rings 5e, which was a supplement off of the One Ring that they were given permission to ultimately put into place. And so, yeah, we are thankful for Cubicle 7. Thank you,
Yeah.
Cubicle 7. January 22nd, 2003, Tolkien's eldest son, John Francis Raoul Tolkien, passes away, and so we remember the father and the children, especially Christopher. Actually, I think it was last week that Christopher actually passed away as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, in back when. So interesting. January 25th, 1976, Hilary Arthur Raoul, J.R.R. Tolkien's brother, dies. I love the name Hilary for a boy because it's just not something that you see often. My grandfather's name was Marion, which obviously, I think there's this weird masculine thing that it was like, oh, that name's not man enough, and that
Yeah.
kind of thing. But I love when you have names that can cross those boundaries, and individuals have those names. But Hilary Arthur Raoul, J.R.R. Tolkien's brother, had died in 1976 on January 25th, which, let's see, it's just 5 days away, so that would be Friday, would be the day that would happen. So those are the dates for our timeline, the Fourth Age, yes.
No, I think it's important to highlight the stuff happening not only in Arda, but the stuff happening in in the Days of Earth, because Tolkien led a fantastic life. He created this amazing universe, but he had huge impacts and made huge strides forward in research, in literature, in academics,
Yeah,
throughout various streams. Is that the word I'm looking for?
sure.
Yeah. He had an impact on various streams throughout the world. I think it's important to recognize some of the stuff that some of the impacts he had on Earth, because it was he led such a jam-packed life. Like I'm in my 30s now, and I have led not even half the life he has led by the time he was my age.
I don't know. Listen, motherhood, I think, is akin to slumping it through the war. So I think you are. I think you are definitely. You're definitely on the front lines there. So, although I was never at the Battle of Somme, so I can't speak.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, I agree with you. Tolkien definitely did have such a range of experience to pull on, where he could call upon several parts of his life. But we also see in characters like Frodo, who, and I posted about this yesterday online. Frodo was just was an absolute poster individual for PTSD. He was broken by the end of the Lord of the Rings, right? And people didn't judge him for it, and they didn't try and oh, Frodo, just cheer up, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
They recognized the depths of the brokenness that he walked through, and I think that is also something that Tolkien probably understood and knew and wanted to portray, in his films. So yes, a life jam-packed, but also I think when he talks about the horrors of war, I think he knows those things intimately, and would tell you that he would love his Hobbit side probably more than that side of his library and his doilies.
Go back to your books and your armchair.
Right.
I love it. I think that it kind of reminds me of that. It's probably a quote, but I can't quote it off the top of my head. That light shines brighter against darkness.
Yeah.
To use an analogy, if you're in a brightly lit room and you light a candle, that candle doesn't seem very bright. But when you go to, the dark basement, in the midst of all that darkness, that candle can be so powerful.
Yeah. Totally. 110%. Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. Well, there is one more. So I was looking here. Hold on. So sorry. I was looking here on the One Ring, just as it's what I pulled up. But it also says that on this day, I think it's worth noting, but probably wasn't in like the main things. But in the year 3020. Hobbiton is busy healing the hurts of Saruman. So if we look forward, isn't it interesting that we look forward from Gandalf years before, or I think a year before, probably, having that fight with the Balrog, and then we look a year after, and Saruman Sharkey has been dealt with in the Shire, and the Shire is flourishing once again. After that point, and so yeah, that's good. That's awesome. And Sam is probably mayor at this point. I don't know.
What year is it?
3020.
Well, the War of the Ring was 3019, I think.
Yeah.
They have an election every 4 years.
Yeah, let's see. When did Sam become mayor?
Because when did Frodo depart Middle Earth? Was it the year after they returned?
Yeah, I think it was just a year after. I think it was just a year after. All right, hold on. Here we go.
Yeah, because I think he tried to let's try to work this out, but I think he gave a good shot and was like, no.
So after the War of the Ring, he married Rosie Cotton on the 1st of May, 1420. They had 13 children. Good Lord.
14? What?
13 children: Eleanor the Fair, Frodo, Rose, Merry, Pippin, Goldilocks, Handfast, Daisy, Primrose, Bilbo, Ruby, and Robin and Tolman.
Oh, good Lord. They, no wonder Sam departed Middle Earth. He was like, I never see my buddy anymore.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay, so after Will Whitfoot resigned his post as mayor of Mickle Delving, in the Fourth Age 6, which I wonder if that is what
That would
that is in.
be 6, because basically the Fourth Age began after the
Right.
War of the Ring, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so probably about 6 years after.
During his service as the mayor of Mickle Delving, King Elisar appointed the mayor as a consular of the Northern Kingdom in SR 1436.
Okay, cool. And
Yeah.
didn't was it Merry or I'm trying to remember. No, I think it was Pippin. Pippin became like was it a guardian of the Shire, or what was it?
It was something like that. I know that as I recall, so I think that that Mary went back to remain in Gondor for an amount of time, possibly as I recall. He requested from Thane Peregrine to make him warden of the West March in 1462. So Thane Peregrine,
Oh, okay. So he became the Thane of the Shire. I guess that makes sense. He's a Took.
Yeah.
So for
Tooklings-
folks that don't know the Thaneship, way back. So
Way back.
in the Third Age, when the Shire was first established, back then, Arnor was the Kingdom of Men actually existed. I say actually existed. There was a king in Arnor, and the hobbits had migrated over to like the Bree lands and had requested from the king of Arnor some land for them to call home. And the king of Arnor was like, yeah, have this area. So the hobbits moved into what became known as the Shire. But then a representative of the relationship between the king and the hobbits was appointed, and this was the Thane. And it historically stayed within the Took side of the lines, the lineage. The Thaneship just passed from Took to Took to Took. And then eventually Arnor fell. That's a whole other story. But then the Thaneship continued on, and it was more of a...
it became a ceremonial title.
Yeah.
Although the Thane could call upon the armies of the Shire, if they so desired, as whatever that would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a rabbit squirrel. Muster the arms. Hobbitry in arms.
What was it when the horn of Buckland blew? They would say foes. Tolkien was so good with the prose with this, but he said when the horn of Buckland, which was the call to arms basically for all of the Shire, it sounded like the horn sounded like it said foes, fire, fiend, it was like that's the sound of the horn there is just such great poetry. But yeah, the Shire originally just supposed to be the wine country for the kingdom of Arnor, and when the king sees the hobbits, he's like, "Sure, you guys go work those grapes over there,
Yeah,
and we'll come and get the wine sometime,
Yeah.
know." And then they started growing weed,
I found the words you were talking about. Awake, fear, fire, foes, awake.
Yes. Such good stuff. Anyway, but yeah, so the Thane would stay in Buckland. The Thane would stay in Buckland, or Tookborough. I can't remember which one.
Tookborough.
Tookborough. So the Thane would stay in Tookborough, and the mayor, which was a later development, was in Micheldelving, which I've heard is actually pronounced Micheldelving. But
I pronounce it Michael Delving because I'm not because I've heard that that's how it's pronounced, but because that makes my brain happy.
Michael Delving, announcing now, the actor for Michael Delving. Amazing, but yeah, definitely different offices, but it's good to know that Sam and Pippin wind up taking. Sam and Pippin take up those offices after they get back to the Shire. So.
No,
amazing.
that's awesome.
That is totally not at all what we came here to talk about today.
No, we just kind of went off on a tangent. I think it was an important tangent to go on.
Yes.
Like we said before, it's about the journey, not the destination.
Right. So you want to jump into main content for today?
Sure.
Or do we want to take a little break and then jump into it? It's up to you.
You know what? Let's take a quick little break here. I'm actually going to switch up my Twitch category. Don't tell Twitch what I'm switching it to. They might. I'm going to switch it to Return to Moria because we will be returning to Moria.
All right, so we're trying to wrangle the views, huh?
Well, we're playing it up a little bit today.
Sure.
I'm feeling chaotic this morning.
I love it.
But yeah,
110%.
let's take a little 5-minute break here. 5 minutes, that work for you?
5 minute is perfect for me. I'll see you at 18.
Awesome. All right. Don't go anywhere,
right back,
everyone.
guys.
We'll be back.
All right.
Alrighty, folks, we are back.
We're back. Amazing.
Let me start off by saying, if you guys would like to see a dedicated category for all talk about Lord of the Rings, I'm going to pop a link into my Twitch chat. David, I'm sure I can't pop in yours without things, but I will message it to you if you desire to pop into your chat.
There's a dedicated category. What is this? What do you mean?
Where I have put in a suggestion to Twitch to create a dedicated Tolkien category, so that people such as us have a place to go to talk about Tolkien, Middle Earth, Lord of the Rings, whatever it ends up being. Just a kind of a catch-all for all that Lord of the Rings stuff. I can't probably pop in your chat without being flagged as a spammer.
Without blowing stuff up. Hold on. I'm gonna go to my channel. I will post. So if you'll post the thing to. Oh, okay, you just did. Okay. Copy text. All right, I will post it. Boom. If I do it, it won't flag me.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so go there, folks. Vote for it, so that we have a place to go.
No, that's great. I actually haven't voted for it, so I'm gonna go vote for it now.
And I just want to point out that I also have a parent cup. I see you have Best Dad Ever cup, and I have a Mama Bear cup.
There you go. There you go. We would love to see, by the way, if you have a picture of your parent cup, because most Tolkien fans are now parents.
Hashtag share your parent cup.
Share your parent cup. That is not a fair generalization. Most parents are not.
I think that older. Most people who got into Tolkien are now of an age that they are starting to raise young Tolkien enthusiasts.
Yes, agreed. Of an age that they could choose.
Yes,
to do that.
You may deem it within your interest to potentially raise young hobbits. Oh my god. Okay, small aside. I was so excited I'm so excited for next year. Or I guess for this year. Yeah, this year. Come Halloween, because my baby will be old enough to kind of waddle around, and I'm going to put him in a little hobbit outfit for Halloween.
Yes.
My husband won't even get a choice on it. It is happening.
Amazing.
All right.
That's awesome.
So
I love that we were doing our daughter's nursery up in Lord of the Rings. In it was going to be all greens and browns.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And just totally Shire-esque. And we even had like little they were like stuffed mushrooms.
Oh, that's cute.
That we found at Target. Yeah,
that's really cute.
That we're gonna put that on the, so.
Oh my god, yeah. I want to do that now. Right now my theme is like just kind of like blues and grays. Like I've got like a Starry Night blue and like
oh, that's cute.
You know, all the like the change table and the crib mattress, all of it's, you know, either dark blue with like silver stars or like dark blue with white stars or like silver with blue star, like that kind of stuff. I didn't want to like completely make a theme because I'm like, this is also going to be a room when it's not a nursery. So
has this turned into Lord of the Rings parents podcast?
Parent podcast. Lord of the Children.
You can catch our new show, Lord of the Children, uh,
where
where
we
you
just
find your podcast.
where we discuss ways to convert your child into a
To Lord of the Rings. I love it. That's fantastic. Well, so jumping into sort of our main conversation for today, we are going to be discussing, since tonight we are going to be playing the Moria expansion to Lord of the Rings 5e. I'm getting my book, the Moria expansion.
I just love your
For 5e.
alternate cover. That's so
I
beautiful.
do too. It's so pretty.
It's
It's just because I kickstarted them way back when.
It's so beautiful. Like, don't. If I could, I would. Like, I already own all the books, but
Right?
I would pay extra money to get a pretty cover.
It even has the nice
Okay,
bookmark
My
strings.
my copy of the Moria book does have the strings as well,
Oh,
but it doesn't have the fancy cover, which is really what I'm desiring right now.
Well, maybe Christmas is only 300 and something days away.
335 days away.
Yeah, 110%. Oh, that's fantastic. Yes, so since we're going into the mines, we're going to be talking about the dwarves. We got a little lowdown last week of the petty dwarves, but now we're going to look at some of the actual houses of the dwarves today. So yeah, why don't you take us in, Phoenix? Who are we going to be talking about?
All right. So we've got maybe a little bit of a heavy content undertaking, but we're gonna try it. We're gonna see how much we can get through here. So let's start off by discussing. We kind of went into a little bit last week, but for those of you that are joining us for the first time, we'll give a little bit of a brief review. So, as we know, Aule was the creator of the dwarves, and
Yes.
Iluvatar breathed life into the dwarves so that they had their own personality and choices and sense of self. And then he said, yeah, they can live, but the elves will wake first, and then your dwarves can wake. So
Right.
in the meantime, Aule planted the dwarves like little seeds throughout the mountains of Middle Earth. Yeah. He pushed them into the ground, inch down, hilled them.
Which would explain, of course, why all the dwarves love to be within the earth, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes total sense. Yeah.
They're potatoes, canonically. So what he did was he planted 2 dwarf potatoes in the Blue Mountains, 1 dwarf potato in the Misty Mountains, and then 4 others in the east, kind of, around the Ruin area. And these 7 dwarves are the 7 fathers of the dwarves.
Yes.
So we have 7 distinct clans or houses. Each of them have their own names. We've got stuff like Firebeard and Broadbeams. We've got Longbeards. I don't remember the other ones.
Let's see if I can if I can find it. Fathers of the dwarves. I'm trying to look here. Yeah, so the fathers of the dwarves had to wait until the elves first arrived. The eldest of all, Durin, lay alone at Mount Gundabad. He later founded the line of the Longbeards. The dwarves, which were most friendly to the elves' men, most are referred to as Durin's folk. 2 others laid to rest in Arid Luin, or the Blue Mountains. They founded the lines of the Broadbeams, the Firebeards, who later lived in Nogrod and Belagast. The other 4 fathers of the dwarves were laid to rest in 2 pairs in Rune. lands to the east, and they founded the lines of the Iron Fists, Stiffbeards, Blacklocks, and the Stonefoots.
Yes.
Stone Feet.
Stone
Sorry.
feet.
Sorry.
No. It's great. So the four dwarf houses in the east, we don't know a whole lot about. There's not a whole lot to talk about with them.
Yeah.
There is a particular two particular notes. One being that we know that Frodo had met dwarves coming through the Shire that came from distant lands where they talked about a growing enemy. And we can theorize that these are dwarves from the Ruin era.
Yeah.
But the only other real time that we encounter all seven clans of the dwarves is during a very particular war, which we will get into as we cover these other three houses.
Yes.
So let's start out with in the not the Third Age, the Years of the Trees. Because this is the time when these dwarf potatoes sprouted up and decided to go out and make their clans.
Yes.
And one in particular was Durin, the Durin. He was the first. He was actually the first dwarf of the seven to wake up. And he was located at a place called Mount Gundabad. And so if you think of the Misty Mountains and the Grey Mountains as kind of a T, right where those two meet is where Mount Gundabad is. And that's where Durin woke up from, is Mount Gundabad.
Yes, I'm actually headed to the interactive Middle-earth map to kind of show where Gundabad is at. There it is. In what is now known as Ered Mithrim, near the Grey Mountains.
Yes.
Yes.
So Durin woke up and he decided, I'm going to go south. So he followed along the Misty Mountains. And this was during the time of the tree. So there was no, sun and moon. Middle Earth, as we know it, was all black. It was dark. Yes. There wasn't a whole lot, a lot of other creatures around. So a lot of the things that Durin encountered, he was actually the first creature to lay eyes on them, or the first, maybe mortal, to lay eyes on them.
Yeah.
And he went and he started naming valleys and hills. He named a bunch of places, and he eventually came to a lake. And at this lake, he looked into the lake, and in his reflection, he saw a crown of 7 stars, and he saw it as a sign. So where that lake was at the base of 3 mountains. Oh God, what were they? The Silverlord.
Mm-hmm.
The...
Yeah, where's Mirror? Hold on. I don't even know how to spell it.
Keledzaram is the name of Mirror. It's like mirror, the name mirror, the word mirror, and then Mere, M-E-R-E.
Okay, yeah. Mirror. Okay, there it is. So Mirror was the dark, like Dimrildale. Yeah, it was east side of the Misty Mountains. Sure, like was located less than a mile below the east gate of Khazad-dûm, what would become Khazad-dûm. Uh, Short distance, ice cold water that was the source of the silver lode during the Deathless. I'm trying to find exactly what the other mountains would be.
I'm gonna see if I can find it here too.
Geled Zaram. Yes, you're right.
Okay, so there's the Redhorn, the Silverteen, and Cloudy Head.
There you go.
There we go. It just required a little bit of searching. So there were these three mountains, and Durin looked in. He saw the crown. He took it as a sign. He decided to erect was it an obelisk?
It was an obelisk.
An obelisk. To signify where he looked into the lake, and proceeded up into the mountains, into the caves, and began to establish the first kingdom of dwarves, what I would argue, the mightiest kingdom of the dwarves, Khazad-dûm, which in Khazad-dûm, I'm pretty sure means the halls of the dwarves, or the great halls of the dwarves, maybe?
I think you're right, yep.
Yeah. So this was happening before the beginning of the First Age. So he went and he established this. Meanwhile, we had some stuff happening or I shouldn't say meanwhile. The other dwarf fathers did wake up before the First Age and establish their own halls, their own kingdoms, and when we get into the First Stage, that's when we start to see some of the story coming to light.
Now, I would just like to note that during seeing the crown of stars upon his head at the Mirror, he literally goes, "Oh, a crown. That must mean that I am to be the king of all the dwarves."
But he was right.
The chosen one.
You were the chosen one.
Right. So he appoints himself. I guess when it's only one of you, I suppose that it's hard not to be like, yeah.
He's like, I am the king of my kingdom of one.
My kingdom of one. It is very interesting to catch that it was dark in the world. I hadn't even remembered that this was a time when the sun was not even in place.
Yeah, and it's crazy to me to think that these dwarves just went out into the world and they're like, yeah, we've got, and actually when you think about it, so, okay, here's going into a little bit of those more interesting things. So if you think about it, when you were a little kid and you were scared of the dark, you would hide under your blanket, kind of isolate yourself, limit the surroundings. You would feel safe in your little limited environment. And if you think about it, if you lived in a world of total darkness, delving into caves is kind of like your blanket, your safety blanket. It limits this big dark world, and it makes sense that the dwarves would have sought closed quarters and more familiar quarters because they were birthed from mountains. So returning to the earth would be very natural for them. No,
I love that. As to where elves sort of they woke with stars in their eyes, right? Like they woke to that expansiveness, and it was part of the beauty of all of this. I'm sure it was overwhelming for the dwarves in terms of, okay, up there is a darkness I don't want to be a part of, but down here I can control this area. And so, being underground and having glittering jewels above you is the same kind of concept of being up on the surface with the stars above you. And so Durin seeing that and recognizing that the wealth of the stars are of his crown is such a poetic moment of like, okay, cool, I'm the leader, let's do this thing. And him founding Moria in the or Khazad-dûm as it was now. It wasn't actually called Moria, I just found out, until after the darkness, after Durin the Fourth's the end of his reign, is when they started calling it in Sindarin Moria, or the darkness below. So
I was just about to find the translation for Moria there, because it that's the thing is, when you talk about dwarves and their name for this kingdom, most dwarves won't just say, oh, it's Moria. They'll say the mines of Moria, the darkness of Moria. But they don't like to refer to the city of Khazad-dûm as Moria, because it's a sacred place for them. It's the place where one of the first fathers of dwarves, regardless if he was if you're Longbeard or not, one of the first kingdoms and the first fathers of dwarves chose this place to be their homeland.
Right.
And like it's going to be so great when we get into our game here tonight, you guys, because there's a lot of really cool things about this place. But there's another name used for Khazad-dûm, not for the overarching idea of Khazad-dûm, but there is a city called Dwerodelf, which I don't remember the translation, but I know it's got the word dwarf in it. I think it's just City of the Dwarves or something like that. But that's like the actual city. So they had the mines of Moria and the city, the Dwerodelf, and the whole was considered Khazad-dûm.
And old Moria, built upon sort of the as you get into it, old Moria was built more towards the front of those caves, facing outward into the world. And it wasn't until they started digging that Moria kind of expanded into this large-scale project all the way through the mountain. And so at first, you've got just the mansions of the dwarves, or the homes of the dwarves, built into the rock face of the dwarf. Well, I can never pronounce it.
That's okay. It's not exactly easy to pronounce anything in Tolkien.
But yeah, so definitely definitely that they had large. Sometimes we think, oh, it was deep within the mountain. No, they were living towards the outside world, but they had just built into that scape their homes and their mansions and those kind of things. And yes, there was a mine down there, sure, but the grandeur of the dwarves was there, open for all to see, sort of a portal to the outside world, if you would. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's great. So they go in here and they make their place, and then eventually, Melkor goes and he destroys the two trees in, is it Ahmed? I forget what it's called.
Ameluin?
That sounds right. So he goes, he destroys the trees, and then eventually they create, the celestial bodies, the sun, moon, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so there is finally light in Middle Earth. Now, I don't know too much about the age that followed the years of the trees, but then we get into the first age, a more familiar time. And for Durin's folk, so for the Longbeards who descended from Durin the First, Durin the Deathless, so they kind of started to spread out a little bit in the First Age. They actually went out and they colonized the Iron Hills, and I believe they colonized the Grey Mountains as well, or Erebor. No, I think the Grey Mountains. And they kind of had this, their territory being this the Rovanian area. So they had this large portion of east of the Misty Mountains, where they just kind of ruled for a little while. And they created something called the Dwarf Road, which ran through the Mirkwood to create a path for dwarf traders between the Iron Hills and Khazad Dûm. During all of this, there were some orcs in the area, but a certain war started, and these orcs had to go over to Beleriand to assist Morgoth, which allowed the dwarves to flourish in this time. It also allowed the first men to move into Rovanian, and these men made an alliance with the dwarves. And if you think about it, so these men migrated from the east, where they had encountered our other dwarves. And these other dwarves, we don't know too much about them, like I kind of preface, but these other dwarves, we know that at least some of them fought on the side of Sauron later on. So if you think about it, these men probably had, not so good relations with the dwarves, moved into the Rovanian area where they encountered Durin's folk, who were like, hey, do you want to, give us food and farmland? We'll, build your roads and give you steel and that kind of stuff. So if you think about the men in that time and age, were probably like, yes, absolutely.
Yes, we will totally do that. Yep.
But before all this comes to a close, the First Age comes to a close, there is a different group of dwarves around this time that are doing things. And David, I don't know if you want to kind of introduce our next two.
Yes, which houses do you want to? What do you want me to hit on?
The dwarves of Nogrod and Belagost, the Firebeards and Broadbeams, I think. I think that's what you call them.
Firebeards, yeah. So, yes, definitely. So the Firebeards were originally paired with the Broadbeams, and their ancestor was among the oldest, together with the ancestor of the Broadbeams and the Longbeards, of the 7 ancestors of the Dwarves. The Firebeards awoke in the Blue Mountains, which, if you take a look at the map, you can definitely see are over on the other side of the map. Near, let's see, where are the Blue Mountains? Where are they at?
By Linden there.
Yeah, they are over by Linden. but I am trying to, let's see. It doesn't show up, I think, in this map like I would want it to. Oh, there they are. There they are. Yeah, I'm a dummy. Right by the Arid Luin. So over here on the far western shore, basically, of Middle Earth, you find the Blue Mountains. And that is where the Firebeards ultimately find their ancestry and wind up settling down. And they lived there throughout the history of their people. These two houses built the great dwarven cities of Nogrod and Belegost. Let's actually just take a look at Nogrod because it's a fascinating place. Nogrod was one of the great underground dwarven cities in the Arid Luin, the other being Belegost, that prospered during the First Age and was home to the dwarves of Nogrod. So the city was built sometimes during the Year of the Tree. So at the same time that Durin was heading southward to found Khazad-dûm, Nogrod was being built in the Blue Mountains. When the Western fathers of the dwarves awoke beneath the Arid Luin, Nogrod traded with traded throughout Beleriand. I always want to say Baraland, but Beleriand, and the dwarves were employed for delving and crafts. Most famously, the Naglamir for King Thingol. So the Naglamir was a necklace of the dwarves that was a famed piece of jewelry, combined with the craft of dwarves and gems from Valinor. So it is basically it's so funny. The elves come over and they're like, "Hey, these guys are good with jewelry. Let's get them to fashion some of our stuff." So they give them these beautiful gems, right? And interestingly, we see sort of in the movie portrayal of during The Hobbit, we see oh shoot, what's his name? Lost his father.
Oh, Thranduil?
Thranduil. We see Thranduil pining after some of the gems that had been given to the dwarves to make some of this jewelry. And interestingly, those gems are from Valinor. Like a lot of the precious gems that we see the elves bringing over are all from Valinor, and just become plentiful throughout Middle Earth for their beauty and rarity. And we have to remember these gems capturing the light of the two trees within them, right? And so there's a lot of sort of that connectivity back to Valinor.
1 second, David. I just I'm keep talking.
Yes.
But my newly adopted dog has escaped my dog run, so I'm just gonna go grab that one moment.
You go do that. I'll keep talking until you get back.
I'll be 2 minutes.
Okay, sounds good. So they had wound up making these beautiful gems, beautiful jewelry, and one of them, the Naglamir, which was just a beautiful necklace that had been created. Let's actually take a look at the Naglamir here real quick. Right, it's a famed piece of jewelry, gems from Valinor. It was one of the grace and beauty with which it gave its wearer. Despite being loaded with gems, it sat lightly on the neck, which is, again, that is a theme that Tolkien presents over and over again. That beauty, it's not like the profane, heavy jewelry of like our time, right? Like the heavy chains and the if it's beautiful, that means it's light and dainty and airy, and that it's beautiful without having to have a gravity to it. And so it's great. It later bore the Silmaril, rescued by Beren from the Iron Crown, and became jewelry more beautiful than anything ever seen before in Arda. But because of the Silmaril, it was coveted by the sons of Fëanor and entangled in the doom of Noldor. And we will get all into that at a totally different time. But let's go back to the Nogrod, the city that these Firebeards basically built. Aol, the dark elf, often went there, as did his son Maeglin. At the end of the First Age, Nogrod was ruined in the War of Wrath, and around the 40th year of the Second Age, the dwarves of the Blue Mountains began to migrate to Khazad-dûm, abandoning Nogrod and Belegost. However, there always remains some dwarves on the eastern side of the Blue Mountain in days afterwards. So we get in the story of The Hobbit that after being cast out of the Lonely Mountain, that Thorin actually winds up in the Blue Mountains with whoever is left over from the Firebeards, basically carving out a history, carving out a living here with the Blue Mountains in smithing and those types of things. But Nogrod is a Sindarin name. It was originally known as Navrod, which means hollow delving, hollow hold, like its original Khazad-dûm name. Tamunazar, Tamunzahar. And the Quenya translation, Navarot. Navrod was altered to Novgrod under the Novgrod. No, Novgrod, I was right. Under the influence of the similar sounding word Nog, or dwarf. Therefore, while the name Hollowbold is provided in the translation of Nogrod, it is not the literal translation. The new name means rather dwarf dwelling. And this and language is terribly important, especially in Tolkien's ways. He wanted a reason for this whole epic to happen so that he could tell why his language became what it was. So that includes sort of the degradation of certain names and things like that, because he wanted it to sound as how do I say this, muddish as English, right? Like the several different cultures kind of coming to represent one basic language here. And so that is about Nogrod, where the Firebeards basically established. And welcome back.
Hi.
Is the doggy okay?
Yeah, we just adopted this dog like a couple days ago, and this is now the third time she's escaped the dog run.
Oh no!
And thankfully, she wants to be around me so much that she's not like running away after she escapes. But I just figured out how she's doing it, so I'm gonna have to do some fun work with some posts to keep her in.
Amazing. No, I totally understand how that goes.
All right.
Yes.
So you covered. Did you get to the War of Wrath?
Yes, I did, and I kind of skated over it, but let me hit on it just a second. And by the way, we have a quote here, so I'll go ahead and read the quote on my screen. I remember well the splendor of their hammers, he said. It recalled to me the glory of the elder days and the hosts of Beleriand. So many great princes and captains were assembled, and yet not so many, nor so fair, as when Thangorodrim was broken, and the elves deemed that evil was ended forever. But it was not so. That's Elrond from the Fellowship of the Ring, the Council of Elrond. I still remember getting to the Council of Elrond in the Fellowship and going, holy crap, there's a lot of names in history here. And me having to literally go back and get like a Tolkien encyclopedia so that I could go through and find everything.
You need a read-along
Totally, like one of those books. I wish it was like a Wikipedia article where I could like hover over something and be like,
okay, yeah. There's actually a really great, I think it's on Reddit. Not for I'm sure there's one for Lord of the Rings, but for the Silmarillion, there's like a read-along thing to assist you in all the references so that you don't get completely lost.
Yes.
Gold. Absolute
yes.
gold.
I believe almost like a, this is the only reference I have, but like a study Bible kind of thing
Yeah,
where
yeah.
where it's got like all the
Actually,
stuff down at the bottom.
yeah, it's exactly like a study Bible.
Where it gives you all the stuff on the in the
Margarines.
spaces. Yeah, the margins. Yeah. So the War of Wrath, or the Great Battle, was the final conflict in the Wars of Beleriand that was against Morgoth and basically the host of the West coming over to meet with the individuals from Middle Earth, the alliances of Middle Earth, to fight against Morgoth. And the devastation caused by the two sides clashing left Beleriand mostly destroyed, and the end of most of the land sank beneath the waves, according to the Tale of Years. It lasted for more than 4 decades. So during this time, we have such incredibly crazy things as Morgoth hiding himself in a, I think, was it Moria, not Moria, but
Is it
Mordor. Was it within Mordor that he hid himself and then basically blew up all of the land around it? Was that
was
what
it
happened?
Angba? No.
It might have been Angband.
I
It
think it
might have
might have
been
been
Angband.
Angband because he's had a few different fortresses. I know Angband was one of them, and actually, interesting note. They actually uh, what's the word? De like de-religionized. I don't know the right word. I'm trying to corrupted almost.
Yeah.
The mountain
Oh,
of
I know what you're.
Gundabad.
Yeah. I remember. Profaned. Not profaned, but something like that. Um,
Yeah. So I want to say it was Angband that he was underneath.
Yes, because it says that the battle, the decisive victory was in the lands around Angband. So you're exactly right. And actually, interestingly, Angband was near a stronghold of Autumno. So you literally have the enemy right near where one of the Valinor had sort of created a space for them within Middle Earth. So um, the crazy thing, like, there's such things as Melkor basically, it looked like he had died down for a time, but basically he'd just gone under the earth. And this is the time during the War of the Wrath, is the time that Melkor or Morgoth created the Balrogs and the ancient evil things, and like started to turn orcs and all that. So he like cooked for a long time down there, and then when he finally came out, he created an explosion that took out so much land and killed thousands of elves in the process. And there was a huge battle that happened there. Anyway, decisively, the host of the West, the all of the elves from Valinor came over and said, "Okay, we're gonna put this to death." And they actually wound up fighting and sinking a whole landmass in the process of fighting this war against Morgoth, and finally achieved the victory and locked Morgoth behind the doors of night in that battle.
Yeah.
But in the process, the Blue Mountains, which was where Nargothrond was destroyed largely. And so most of the Firebrand dwarves that were there, or Firebeard, excuse me, Firebeard dwarves were there, were like, "Hey, let's head over to Durin's place because he's got room and it's not as bad there." And so they kind of just left some of their folks behind who wanted to stay, and they came over largely to Khazad-dûm.
Yeah. This now gets us into the Second Age.
Yes.
So jumping into the Second Age, as David just mentioned, we increase our amount of dwarves in Khazad-dûm, and because of that, Khazad-dûm begins to expand very rapidly. We have all the Longbeards, Durin's folk, and now the folk from Nogrod and Belagost, so the Firebeards and the Broadbeams, and they.
Oh, I didn't even talk about the Broadbeam. Sorry.
Well, and
Go ahead.
it's the Broadbeams and the Firebeards are kind of like
Yeah.
they share a history, so there's
Mm-hmm.
not a lot of or I shouldn't say there's not a lot, but there's not any discernment on whether the Broadbeams were in Belagost or the Firebeards were in Belagost, and vice versa for Nogrod. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
they kind of share a bit of a history.
Yeah.
I just know that one of them was more crafty.
It was the Firebeards. The Firebeards literally created the I forget the name of the necklace, but they created a necklace where one of the Silmarils would be fitted into it for the elves, and so yes, so
Yeah,
after it was stolen back by
yeah. Was it the Noglamir? No.
it might have been the Noglamir. It was something like that.
Yeah. So anyways, so we have all these dwarves. And did you talk about no, never mind. It's not actually important. And we'll get on to we'll probably come back to that topic. But they came over to Khazad-dûm, and Khazad-dûm began to grow and grow and grow. At this time, the elves established a realm near Khazad-dûm that came to be known as. Sorry, I'm about to say the wrong word. Not Erebor. Eregion.
Eregion. Yeah.
So the elves established Eregion, and Celebrimbor, a great elven smith, formed a friendship with a dwarf from Khazad-dûm, Narvi.
No, Narvi. I was going to say Naldi.
Naldi.
Narvi.
Narvi.
Yeah, Naldi.
And
the great grocer dwarf. Naldi.
yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's good. So they form a friendship, and this friendship actually ends up defining something pretty profound. Because as we continue through the Second Age, when Sauron decides to attack Eregion, it is actually the dwarves of Khazad-dûm that come to the aid of Eregion and distract Sauron long enough that the elves are able to, well, what remains of the elves are able to escape and head over to establish Imladris, or Rivendell.
Right.
And had the dwarves not had that friendship with the elves at that time, Sauron probably would have wiped out a good portion of elves at the time, Elrond being amongst them. As well, he probably would have captured some of the rings.
Yes.
Because there were some rings in the area at that time. So this friendship between Celebrimbor and Narvi worked in their favor because the elves and the dwarves were able to work together and live to fight on another day.
Yes.
Now, the dwarves after this retreated into Khazad-dûm, closed the door, and Sauron couldn't feign, couldn't even theorize, the idea of friendship at that time. So obviously he couldn't get past the doors.
Right.
So the dwarves kind of locked themselves in, and Sauron decided that the dwarves were enemies now. Now the orcs have orders. If you see dwarves, kill them because I don't like them anymore.
it's so interesting. When you start looking at the map and you start looking at the landmass, you actually start the scale of Lord of the Rings in the movies seems a lot grander. But when you look at some of the places that some of these fights took place and some of these huge historical things, they're just so close together. Like what you have here is on one side you have Lorien, which winds up becoming the home of the Galadorn. You have Khazad-dûm in the middle, right? So they're literally surrounded by elves, with Eregion to the west and Lorien to the east. They are kind of in the middle there, Eregion, and then you have the last homely house. Rivendell.
Rivendell.
You have Rivendell there as well. So you literally have dwarves sandwiched by elves in this small area here, where there's a lot of trade that Moria probably was one of the areas, unless they were going to go all the way down through another pass in the mountain. They're looking at Moria. I'm sure the elves are looking at Moria as, hey, we could just pass through. Like we could just go through here. Like this is this is a nice way to get from one side to the other. So the dwarves in their fortification against Sauron basically blocks off a lot of what can happen, but in the flow between the land masses here, basically in Middle Earth. But anyway, I just wanted to. It's so interesting. Whenever I look at the maps, I'm like, that's good information. Seeing Eregion there, and for better or for worse, we saw a good display of this in War of the Ring, right? Eregion and its relationship with Durin and its Celebrimbor and his construction of the rings there in Eregion. And so there's a lot of that history that flows kind of in this very short space here on the map.
Yeah, no, Rings of Power, I think, did a good, maybe the timelines were a little condensed, but
Yes.
that makes sense for a TV series.
Right,
But
definitely.
they do a pretty good job of representing some of the main events that occur here, and bringing to life some of the stuff that could have happened in the battle. I think it's interesting to note, though, so unlike in the Rings of Power, in Tolkien's work, when the not the dwarves, when Sauron's forces start to become a threat, Galadriel and her daughter actually pass through Khazad-dûm to Lorien at the time. And it's actually interesting because, so I will preface, I don't know a whole lot about the differences between all the elves, but Celeborn and Galadriel are two different types of elves.
Yeah.
And the Celeborn was actually around at the time that the dwarves of the Blue Mountains, the Firebeards and the Broadbeams, betrayed. Was it Finrod? No, Thingol.
Bengal. Yeah.
Thingol. At that time, Celeborn was around, so he has a little bit of poor history with the dwarves. But unlike Celeborn, Galadriel, her whole type of elf has not had
Yes.
bad relations with dwarves at all. And so she's a lot more trusting and a lot more willing to travel through Khazad-dûm than her husband is. And if I remember correctly, I think Celeborn stays in Eregion when Sauron actually comes to, was it Austin Edel?
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
Yeah. I remember that. At least I think that's how you spell it.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, really interesting note. Now, as we know, there's a big battle, and Sauron isn't able to get in, so he kind of abandons that, and he goes off on his own little side quest.
Yes. We will. I'm sure there'll be a future broadcast, but sorry, my ADHD took over suddenly.
Yeah,
and
no.
I was like, oh yeah, the different types of elves. Yeah, we totally have to go over that. And so I was like, there'll be another broadcast where we'll take a look at the sundering of the elves and all of that kind of stuff. But
there's so much to cover with that. That's an entire like topic.
That's an arc.
Yeah, that's an arc.
For that.
Multi-segmented.
Yeah, where did we come from? Well, we didn't all come from Gondolin, but we kind of all came from Gondolin. Oh gosh.
Well, and there's such a hierarchy with the elves, right? Like they,
Yeah.
They
like
some elves are like, I am this type of elf, so I am more powerful and I control you, basically.
No, totally, 110%. There is a caste system. A lot of people are like, "Oh yeah, elves. They're just..." No, there's definitely a caste system within the elves, and the what is commonly referred to as the tree elves or the forest elves, which are basically Legolas Greenleaf and his clan. They're like the lowest of the totem pole, like the ones that they're like, yeah, you guys don't get to come back to Valinor, you just stay here.
Yeah.
So like, it's so funny. And even after the War of the Ring, apparently a lot of the tree elves or the forest elves wound up staying within Middle Earth. And that is sort of Tolkien's love letter to what were the fairies, like what were those beings that we kind of go, oh, well, they were from fairy descent, or they still have some of the blood of the fairies in them,
Yeah.
It's like they wound up dying out, or there were some people that may have been half elven or half fairy that were a part of that. But anyway, sorry.
No, and
that's a totally different deal.
So it is interesting to note before we close off the second age here, that the dwarves did not completely, or the Durin's folk, I should say, did not completely abandon Middle Earth in the second age. Because after the doors of Durin were closed, Durin the Fourth, who is depicted in Rings of Power, he's the ginger Scotty guy.
Yes, the loving father, the husband of Disa. Yes,
He's so great. I love the way that they depict them. But that's an aside. But during the War of the Last Alliance of Elves and Men, so this being, if you think about way back in the Fellowship of the Ring, the very beginning, where we see Elrond and Isildur fighting alongside each other, and then oh God, what is his name? Isildur's father. Arundel. He's slain in that battle. So that is the last alliance of elves and men. So this is the very end of the second age here. And during this alliance, Durin the Fourth did send albeit small group of dwarves, but he did send some dwarves to fight alongside the elves and men against Sauron's forces.
Yes. Yeah, it was a very smallish contingent. At that time, the dwarves became, after, and I think we can understand why, but after the War of Wrath, the dwarves became quite, I'm not I don't want to say xenophobic. They feel like get more suspicious of the world around them. You know, with the Firebeards coming over and that kind of thing, I can completely understand why they were like, "Hey, um, there's some dangerous stuff outside. Let's kind of just dig our holes down here and be down here." Especially after, you get yeah, they definitely made communion and relationship with the elves. I think it's always interesting. They closed the doors of Durin, but they ultimately, the Elvish word for friend is the thing that opens the doors. And only elves that were friends with the dwarves would know this information, would understand this information. So there are vestiges of that relationship that still remains, and Tolkien's continual bringing back of, yes, these two people are divided by time and difficulty, but there is constant hope that the two of them can rekindle relationships again, which he then brings back with Legolas and Gimli, and presents that concept and that idea within the story, is always really great. But yeah, and the doors being built both by elves and men, I mean elves and dwarves, is such a great deal. Yep.
Oh, it's so good. I would just echo your sentiments there, because I love the representation of where elves and dwarves decide to, put aside their differences and kindle a friendship. In the movie series where Gimli and Legolas are like, "Oh, I really hate you. Yeah, I really hate you too. But we like competing and we like killing. So let's compete to kill."
And we'll be friends over this particular part of our lives.
I just love it. Small side note on that, like the fact that in the fourth age, Legolas is like, "Screw you guys, I'm gonna take my dwarf to the Undying Lands with me."
Totally does. He's like, "Peace, I'm out." Me and my friend are going.
Everyone else, Elrond's like, "I can't take my daughter because she's mortal now, and she's got a mortal husband." And Legolas is like, "I'm sneaking him in like contraband."
It is a bromance for the ages. It is. It is. Talking about, we can't mention Khazad-dûm without, of course, mentioning the rarest mineral on the face of Middle-earth, and that which Durin and his line ultimately found within the mountain, Mithril.
Mithril. The mineral of starlight.
Yes. Some have posited, and the Rings of Power kind of mentions towards this, or kind of alludes towards this, that there's a possibility of some of the roots of the trees, of the two trees of Valinor themselves, making up some of that mithril, that it was passed into the earth, the strongest and lightest of metals, that which the jewelry, the grand jewelry of the dwarves ever after was made. So within Khazad-dûm, we definitely find the mithril, and it was that expansion, that was Durin's expansion within the Misty Mountains, within Khazad-dûm, that ultimately releases then Durin's Bane, the Balrog of old. Obviously, how did the Balrog get down there? As I recall, it was during the War of Wrath that it was planted down deep there, correct?
Well, basically what happened. So you guys remember how I said that Gundabad was at the top of the Misty Mountains, basically, and it had been corrupted by Morgoth and by Sauron and basically evil forces. But basically, what they've been doing down there since they first went in there, they've been tunneling deep under the Misty Mountains and creating, horrors under the Misty Mountains. And eventually, now I think it was theorized that some of the tunnels in the deeps of Khazad-dûm, in the mines of Moria, connected to the tunnels from Gundabad, where the Balrogs were housed, basically. And the Balrog had basically been sleeping, having a cat nap in the depths of Khazad-dûm.
Right.
Until the Third Age.
Until the Third Age.
In 1980, when during the Sixth, and this is important that we know that this was during the Sixth, they awoke the Balrog, and for about a year they tried to maybe we can do a cohabitation thing. And eventually, during the Sixth was killed by the Balrog, and his son Nain, and some people pronounce it Nain. I saw a really convincing argument to pronounce everything with 2 syllables, so that's what I'm going to roll with. Nain led the Durin's folk out of Khazad-dûm, and they abandoned their ancestral home that they had been in, since before the First Stage, which is huge. This is can you imagine living in a place for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, so far back that you can't even trace, back who your ancestors were, and leaving everything and trying to move forward from that.
And the dwarves become, throughout the history of Middle Earth, displaced again and again and again. And it's usually due to their own greed. Yes, it's their own advancement, which is the Catholicism of Tolkien comes back up yet again, of this outreaching your grasp kind of thing. It's one of those things we did do this, and we pushed forward to do this, but was it really important? Why were we doing this? And so they, that's why we get the line from Gandalf: "They delved too greedily and too deep," and so it's kind of one of those things but this was their home. This was the deal. They spent thousands and thousands of years digging this place out. And they just pushed too far down. Yeah. And released this Balrog.
And there's something I think I've quoted before. Dwarves dig. It's what they do.
That's what they do.
If you have a dwarf, I mean, what you think your dwarf's gonna do? You got your pet dwarf has to have a place to dig.
Yes, 110%.
I like how you summarize that, though. That's basically to characterize everything that happens to the dwarves in the Third Age is they got too greedy and had to move.
They just had to move. They keep moving. They keep moving. Nain, I will take your thing. Nain, the first also is slain, trying to get the people out of Khazad-dûm. And we lose him too. So now we've lost Durin, we've lost Nain, and now the dwarves are on the run. So
Yeah,
Yes,
and
good morning, Mina.
they head to of the idea of dwarves needing a place to dig mine like in Minecraft. Yeah.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
do.
that's
They do.
basically. Yeah, dwarves. Minecraft was built for dwarves. However, it's that moment when you just dig so deep that you accidentally wind up digging to the nether deep, and it's just open below you into oblivion. That's
Do.
basically what they did. Yeah, that's basically how they constantly live.
They're basically like hamsters. You had to give them lots of bedding so that they can tunnel.
um. So Nain is lost. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No. Yeah. So Nain's lost. And his son Thrain or Thrain,
Yeah.
the first, takes his people, and there are some people that decide to head from Khazad Dûm to the Iron Hills,
Yeah.
or sorry, not the Iron Hills, to the Grey Mountains. But most of the people go with Thrain to Erebor,
Yeah.
where they establish, you know, the iconic location of at the Lonely Mountain, this new capital for the dwarves, and they did pretty good there for a while, and then they were like, "Hey, we hear that our cousins in the Grey Mountains are doing really good. We want some of that."
Uh huh.
And
Uh
so
huh.
they decide to move from Erebor to the Grey Mountains. Now, as we've covered before,
Mm-hmm.
the Grey Mountains border a place with some not so great neighbors.
Uh-huh.
And in what is it called? Forodwaith,
Barred with yes. Yep.
the cold wastelands to the north of the Grey Mountains. A
Yep.
bunch of dragons decide, hey, you guys have a lot of riches in that mountain. We would like
Right.
to get some of that. And so then begins the war of the dwarves and dragons.
Just to note, there are quite a few wars that are named the War of the Dwarves and blank. Like
The
just
the naming scheme for these wars: the war of the dwarves and orcs, the war of the dwarves and
War of the Dwarves and
dragons,
Dragons. Yeah.
the last alliance of elves and men, the battle of 5 hour. Like it's very factual, like who is
and
involved.
and some of the time, like I'll get questions from people sometimes that they're like, "Hey, why don't we hear a lot about the dwarves during the War of the Ring? Like we see the elves fight, we see the men fight," and I'm like, "Look, the dwarves had their own problems they were dealing with during that time." And actually, the Red Book gives us an interesting point that Sauron was attacking Erebor again, afresh and anew. During the War of the Ring to try and keep the dwarves back. Because the dwarves were kind of a fighting force. Like, they were pretty heavy. But you see the dwarves carving out their own path again and again and again, and not mixing it up with the elves and men so much as they are fighting off dragons, fighting off orcs, trying to retake their home. Fighting dragons. I was going to say fighting Smaug, but yes, there is all that. But
I mean, we do
yeah.
get to that eventually. But
Right.
yeah, so the dwarves are attacked by dragons in the Grey Mountains, and eventually, who was it? It was Thrain, I believe, that perished. I believe on at the gates of their city,
Yeah.
with I think his second oldest son.
Trying to remember.
Because there were three sons of Thrain. There was Gror, Fror, and Thror, I think. Wait, Gror,
Yeah,
Thror.
Thor was one of them. We have to say that.
Yeah, Fror, Gror, and Thror.
Yeah.
Because we like to make them all sound the same, so it's hard to
Yes.
pronounce. So Dain and Fror were killed by a cold drake.
Hmm.
And then his remaining two sons, Gror and Thror, decided we gotta get out of here. So they led the remainder of the dwarves. Gror leading a portion of the people to the Iron Hills, which was already a mine where the dwarves were getting their iron.
Yeah.
But they actually, Gror decided, let's go there and establish this a little bit more, make this a home instead of just a work location. And so he established the dwarves of the Iron Hills and became the Lord of the Iron Hills, the first Lord of the Iron Hills.
Yeah.
His brother Thror decided, let's return to Erebor,
Hmm.
that place we abandoned because we didn't think we were getting rich enough, and was like, let's get rich. So they mined and they did some scheming, and guess what happened?
The dragons said, "Ooh, I like all that." The dragons from the north that they had fought with the foreknowledge that the dwarves and the dragons had battled before, and Smaug had his eye on the dwarves already.
Yeah.
You know, he comes down from the north and says, "Okay, all right, you killed some of my people. Now I'm going to come and take your mountain." And he winds up taking Erebor at that point.
It's kind of like a cat stalking a dairy farmer. Like,
Yeah,
I know you're going to eventually, find milk. I'm just going to keep my eye on you until you find some more milk, and then I'm going to.
yes. If the cat were the size of a horse and could breathe fire, yes. That is very apt. And so Smaug Thror,
Well,
and his
Thror
group.
died, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure. And his son, Thrain, yeah, Thrain and grandson, Thorin,
Thorin.
uh, left Erebor, and they actually came to Dunland, which I don't know if you have the map up on your stream, David.
I do.
But that is kind of to the south of
The
Eriador.
Mhm.
It's kind of west of the Misty Mountains there. And it's actually where, kind of bordering on where Eregion was.
And Dunland, if we remember from the War of the Ring, I mean, not War of the Ring, but the War of Rohirrim, that we just saw, Dunland is where the Dunlandings are from, which is a sort of a mountainous warrior tribe of men that exist in those hills as well, that are offshoots way back when, offshoots of the men of Rohan, which were to the south and the southeast. Yeah.
Yeah. And so these dwarves, they were homeless. They just followed Thror to Dunland. And Thror was like, I think that Thror was a little desperate at the time.
Yeah.
And he was like, let me just go check out Khazad Dûm, see if that's good. And so he went with another dwarf, just one dwarf, so there were only two of them. And he was like, wait here, I'm going to go check out what's inside. And he ended up getting decapitated by Azog, the orc chieftain Azog that we actually see.
Defiler.
Yeah, we actually see him in the Hobbit movies. And he tossed his body out, and he tossed, I forget if he tossed the coins on his body or if he had them in his mouth or whatever, but he basically branded him a beggar. And this other dwarf that came with him was like, I'm going to go tell everyone else. So he went back and told Thrain, hey, your dad has been murdered by this orc.
Yeah.
And Thrain does, now this is where all of them come in. He sends out word to all the dwarves and he's like, we need to avenge my father. And
Right.
all 7 houses of the dwarves basically declare absolute war on the orcs. And they go to town on the Misty Mountains. And they go
Yes.
into like every stronghold, hidey hole, village, dark, damp corner of the Misty Mountains. And they just annihilate all the orcs.
Just a heads up. I was actually reading the thing. Nar hid nearby for many days until he saw Thror's body flung down the steps. His severed head lay face down, downward on the ground. As he knelt there, Nar saw branded across his forehead in dwarvish runes the name Azog. This orc then threw a small coins of purse at him, calling him a beggar. Nar fled, weeping down the silver load, while orcs emerged and attacked Thor's body and hacked Thor's body into pieces and fed them to the crows. So this is the initiating moment where they're like, heck nah. Let's take out every single, and that was their purpose. They were like, we're going to kill every single orc that there is alive. It was a death squad is what they wanted. I mean, we can talk about we can talk about genocide all we want, but they were kind of like, we're gonna wipe them out completely. So
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So that's what started the War of the Dwarves and Orcs.
Yes. And they were absolutely like without any sort of what's the word?
Mercy. Pity.
Mercy. Yeah, there was no mercy. They just absolutely wiped the floor with dwarves. And then they got to the bottom of the Misty Mountains, to the valley of Azanulbizar.
Welcome
can't-
to Kazduel, guys.
Yeah. So Azanulbizar is the valley in which Khazad Dûm sits. And Azanulbizar, all these dwarfs, led by Thrain, begin a war on the orcs. And this is known as the Battle of Azanulbizar. And this is the most vicious, bloodthirsty battle of the dwarves and orcs thus far. I think, I would argue probably in all of history. I think at one point, I forget which dwarf it was, but at one point one of the dwarves looked upon all the loss and couldn't comprehend the great cost to the dwarves that day.
So in The Hobbit, they kind of show this a little bit. They kind of crunch a bunch of things together, and they show Thorin beheading Azog, or excuse me, Thorin killing Azog. He thought that he had killed Azog. They had to bring back an antagonist for it, so they brought Azog back to life throughout the Hobbit. But the reality was, it was actually Dane of the Iron Hills, which was Thorin's cousin, right? They split when some of them stayed in the Iron Hills and some of them went back to Erebor. But it was actually Dane that decapitated Azog. At that point. So they catch it a little bit in the movie, like they're kind of looking out over all the dead bodies, and they're trying to capture at least that feeling of Anubizar, of how it wound up.
So his is Azanulbizar. So Dain was the son of Nain, and he So Azog beheaded Nain, and
Yes.
Dain, his son, saw this. And it is worth noting that Dain at this time was the dwarven equivalent of a 14-year-old.
Right.
So he was maybe body-wise large enough to wear armor and hold a weapon, but he was not an adult by any sense of the word. He was very young, and he immediately went and beheaded Azog and avenged his dad right there. And like, it was just a huge feat for them. But after all of this was done,
Can I
Yeah,
read a passage here?
Yeah.
The battle began on a dark winter day, and no sun was said to have shined through the clouds. The dwarves had marched into the Dimril Dale, where they found the East Gate and sent up a great noise. They discovered that on the western slopes above, thousands of orcs had gathered, whilst more still came pouring out of the gate. The dwarves there stood outnumbered on the lower end of the sloping hill. The first vanguard, led by King Thrain, assaulted the slopes, only to be driven back with casualties. In the woods near Miramir, the dwarves noted that Frerin, the youngest son of Thrain, was slain, along with Fundin, the father of Balin, and many others. Thrain himself was wounded, as was his eldest son, Thorin II Oakenshield. Which, of course, Thorin Oakenshield we know from The Hobbit, whose shield was broken during the battle, forcing him to resort to using an oak branch that he cut off a tree to defend himself. Elsewhere, the battle swayed back and forth until Nain from the Iron Hills arrived with a contingent of fresh troops. Nain and his dwarves cut through the orc lines with their mattocks shouting, "Azog, Azog, Azog," until they had reached the steps of the gate, at which Nain called Azog to come out and fight. When Azog emerged from the inner gate with his guards, Nain was exhausted and half blind with rage. He tried to swing as hard as he could, but Azog darted aside and Nain missed, splintering his mattocks to the ground. The orc kicked him in the leg when he dodged the dwarf's blow, making him stumble, at which point Azog attempted to thrust and behead him, succeeding only in breaking Nain's neck because of the strong mail that he was wearing, and Nain died instantly. Even as Azog gloated over his duel, he looked out over the valley which the East Gate overlooks and came to the realization that his entire force was routed. Those that could were fleeing southwards, and all his guard were dead. With that, he fled back to the gate. Nain's son, Dain, leapt up the stairs after him with his red axe, and there before the gate he decapitated the orc chieftain, thus ending the battle. The slaying of Azog was considered a great feat. Dain was only 32 years of age, very young for a dwarf. Dain would later become king under the mountain as Dain II Ironfoot. Azog's head was then impaled on a pike. A bag of coins that he had thrown at Nar years before was stuffed into his mouth.
Which is awesome. That's a really good excerpt there. I love that.
Yeah.
And it just, I think it really highlights like how epic this battle was. This was a huge battle. And following this battle, Thrain was like, okay, let's go inside. And Dain looked inside and had the foresight to be like, no, evil still resides there. We shouldn't go inside. And again, he's like 14, the equivalent of a 14-year-old, which is, you know, so cool. So cool for this dwarf. But the dwarves then split up. So the dwarves from the east returned there. The dwarves from the Blue Mountains returned to the Blue Mountains. As for Durin's folk, so some of them went back with Dain to the Iron Hills, but some of them returned to Dunland, and eventually they went to stay in the Blue Mountains.
In Eriador, yep.
Yeah, and they while they were there, we're getting close to the end of this. Thrain was like, I want to retake Erebor. So he gathered a group of companions, which
because of course we haven't suffered enough.
God.
After half their forces were dead. The dwarves went back victorious, yes, but much smaller in number at that point. Yeah, sorry. Anyway, go ahead.
No, and he was like, oh, yeah, we can retake a mountain. And he gathered this group, and I'm pretty sure Balin was in this group.
He was, yeah.
And they went, and while they were traveling through, I think it was Mirkwood, they were captured, and Thrain was actually brought to Dol Guldur. And that is where he stayed for a long time, and actually eventually where he died. But while he was in prison there, he was tortured. Eventually, he didn't even know who he was. And
they show this in the movie, especially in the extended edition. We get some extra scenes here that kind of lend themselves to this story.
I haven't watched the extended Hobbit. I didn't even know that they existed. I didn't even know that the extended versions of The Hobbit existed until like a few months ago.
What?
I did not know. No one told me.
I was not notified.
I wasn't notified. No one sent me an email. I wasn't included on the memo. No, I didn't know that. So I can't speak to what the movies have, but I do know that he was imprisoned, and eventually Gandalf finds him and gets the key from him, or is given the key from him to Erebor, which I don't really know why the orcs didn't take it away. I don't know why he still had that. That's another,
makes you wonder where he kept it. I'm just saying where he placed it. I'm sure they searched him.
Well, I have a lot of questions.
Dwarves have a vestigial pouch. That's you heard that here on Middle Earth Mondays.
Yeah. But he gets the stuff, and eventually he meets Thorin Oakenshield outside of Bree, and realizes, oh, that guy that I met was your dad. And that's where we get the gathering of the company. Eventually, the quest to retake Erebor, and the Battle of Five Armies, which I won't go into because that's very long and hard. And eventually, Dain leads more dwarves from the Iron Hills to assist yet again, and becomes the king under the mountain when Thorin and Fili and Kili die. And he is Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no. That because the three of them would have claim to the throne, right? Thorin was direct descendant, and then Fili and Kili, I think, were cousins. They were.
Yeah, so they were
sisters.
Thorin's nephews. So Thorin had a sister named Dis, the only female dwarf we know about in Tolkien's work. And so she had Fili and Kili. But yeah, and then that entire, descent for that line of Durin was exnayed. And we do know that, there are still descendants of Durin. Gimli is a descendant of Durin, Balin is a descendant of Durin, but they weren't directly in the line to, take over the kingship.
Yeah. And so Dain stepping up from the Iron Hills. Now, I forget if Dain led all of the dwarves from the Iron Hills back to Erebor.
I think he
Uh,
did, because he eventually does become like he's quite a big power
yeah,
in Erebor at that point. So I think that the Durin's folk eventually move back to Erebor as not ancestral home, but their next to ancestral home.
yeah. So he became, as Reign of King, he became exceedingly rich, and people were very prosperous. The dwarves were very prosperous. Town of Dale was rebuilt, um, and there was a friendship struck with the elves of Mirkwood, men of Dale, and the dwarves of Erebor. Um, Between the men and dwarves from the dwarves of Erebor now exceeded all their ancestors in the art of masonry and mining, and created many beautiful things in the Dale. So a good ending to the Battle of the Five Armies, or as best as could be possible for the dwarves here.
Yeah.
However, but not all were content, and Balin, our friend Balin, sets off to reclaim Moria in TA 2989. Dane did not give the expedition his blessing and could not dissuade them. It was only later learned the colony was destroyed after 5 years. And that's true. They went back to try and repopulate, but the orcs were still. In fact, interestingly, the orcs down in Moria had basically started worshiping the Balrog as a god, as a deity, and I love that point. Like they've created their own society, like
Yeah.
down there in
it,
the.
it's got goblin vibes.
It totally has goblin vibes. I'd like to read a little bit about what happens with Dane during the War of the Ring, if that's okay with
Yeah,
you.
yeah. No, take it away.
So in TA 3018, a messenger came from Mordor inquiring about a creature named Baggins from the Shire. In return for information, Dane would be given the last 3 dwarf rings. Interesting, right? Like the let's see, how many did they get? 9? Did they get 9? Or
Seven
was it
for the dwarves, but most of
7?
these rings were actually consumed by dragons in all of these
Yes.
different dragon attacks.
So apparently Sauron got a hold of 3 of the dragon rings, 3 of the dwarven rings, and was offering them to Dane for help. Now Dane being, so Thorin falling to the dragon sickness and his family falling to the dragon sickness, Dane was made of apparently some sterner stuff. Dane told him to give some time to think, and for many weeks pondered until he sent Gloin and his son Gimli to Elrond for counsel, and to warn Bilbo of the enemy looking for them. So that is the moment that he's like, all right, so we're going to send Gloin and we're going to send Gimli there to the last homely house, back to Rivendell. And that is where Gimli joins the party for the Fellowship of the Ring. After many months, war came to Erebor in the Battle of Dale. King Brand of Dale was at war with the Easterlings along the River Carnan, right? Because the Easterlings had basically they had created a bunch of corsairs, a bunch of ships that they had sailed all up and down that area of the coast, just attacking whatever settlements that they could possibly do. But the River Carnan was one of those that they had sailed some of those ships up and were starting to attack. So the Easterlings starting to attack in there. They defeated him, and he retreated back to Dale, where he was given aid by Dane and the army of the dwarves. This is Brand, of course. King Brand, is that
He's the grandson of Bard, I'm pretty sure.
Brand was known as King Brand, the grandson of Bard the Bowman. It's exactly who it is. But they defeated him, and he retreated. Okay, yeah. Dane, army of the dwarves. After 3 days of fighting, the dwarves and men were driven back, and Brand was slain. But defending his body stood Dane, who over 250 years old was not feeble.
Oh,
yeah.
God.
I'm not going to curse on your stream, but I love that.
No. I just love, like, oh my God, dying is probably one of the most epic dwarves. Like, honest to goodness, like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm just fangirling.
So, 250-year-olds was not feeble, and still could wield his axe with great skill. But his skill was not enough, and he was slain as well before the gates of Erebor. Several days later, the Easterlings learned that the Battle of Pelennor Fields was lost, and they were afraid. When the new king Thorin III Stonehelm, son of Dane, and Bran's son Bard II saw this, they came out of the mountain and routed their enemies.
It's so great. It's so great. I just love the Battle of Dale. I love that end for dying. He's such an epic guy, and he could have been like, oh, it's just a lowly human, or oh, he's already dead, who cares about it? But he was like, you will not defile this body. And he, like, to protect the honor and the integrity of his fallen comrade, his fallen ally, is just, it speaks volumes about the quality of his character, and the fact that he died defending his body is just...
It brings a beautiful conclusion to the difficulties that were presented within the Battle of the Five Armies, because here you have, this is a war over territory at that point. And let it be said that Erebor is an extremely important sort of battleground and cross-through path for Mordor and for Rhûn and the East to get to the West. And so the men and dwarves had to join together in order to be able to hold this place for what it was worth. And so him dying, protecting that, and then his son with the name Thorin, which is, again, an allusion to that. So it was prophesied that the first dwarf father, Durin the Deathless, that he would return 6 times in his lifetime, that he would be reincarnated 6 times, which are all the Durins that we get, the 6 of the Durins that are named within the story. And so now and the idea of reincarnation, or the namesake being placed upon the sons, this is now Thorin III, as Thorin II was Oakenshield. Now he fulfills the final task that his father started, and completely routes the enemy back away from Erebor. Thorin giving his life, and his son completing the task. Just such poetry in motion here from Tolkien.
Mm-hmm. And then to round things off, following the War of the Ring, as we get into the Fourth Age here, Gimli ends up establishing a new realm for some of Durin's folk in the mountains behind... what is it called? Helm's Deep. Helm's Deep. In a place known as the Glittering Caves.
The Glittering Caves.
And he basically said that these caves were a likeness, like when Khazad-dûm was at the height of its glory. And there's a conversation between him and Legolas. And Legolas is like, oh, the dwarves will ruin it, and they'll take away the beauty. And Gimli's like, no, they would worship this place. Like, this is unprecedented beauty. So Gimli established a realm for the Glittering Caves, and as prophesized, eventually Durin the Seventh is born, and he leads his people back from Erebor to retake Khazad-dûm, where eventually the dwarves grow old and stay until the end of their days.
Yes. And Durin the Deathless completes the cycle.
It's so good. It's so good. I cannot believe we got through all of that.
Isn't that crazy?
I had my doubts, but
I had my doubts. She says, I wanna go through the family line just real quick so that everybody can see, because I actually haven't pulled up on mine. So we have Nain the Second, who gave birth to Dane and Borin. Dane the First and Borin. Dane had these children, as we're remembering. Dane had Thror, and Gror. Thror had Thrain the Second. And Gror had Nain. And then out of Nain came Dane Ironfoot, and then Thorin the Third, and then eventually Durin the Seventh, which is the one that we just talked about.
So that was from Dain's. Okay.
Yes. So Dain, Gror, Nain, Dane the Second, and Thorin the Third, and then Durin the Seventh.
Oh,
That's
so then
the direct line.
So then when the Battle of Dale happened, we have Dain die and his son Thorin take up the helm. So then Thorin gives birth. He doesn't give. He fathers. During the Seventh. Okay. So it's only one more.
Well, so Thror's line gives birth to Thrain the Second, who then Thrain the Second gives birth to Thorin Oakenshield, Freyrin, and Dis. Dis then gives birth to Fili and Kili, who were the cousins. So yeah, that's a crazy line of lineage there within what we just all talked about.
Yeah, it's so confusing, but it's so great.
Then Borin over here, the other son of Nain, bears Farron. Farron then bears Fundin and Groin. Groin births, begats Oin, and Gloin, and Gloin begats Gimli. So there is only 1, 2, 3. There's a very close relationship between Gimli and Thorin the Third. Mm-hmm. They are cousins. What looks like twice third removed. I don't know how the cousins works. I'll be really honest.
Know how it works either.
I really don't.
But Gimli is a prince in his own right.
Yes.
And eventually, it would have led to Gimli being a potential
heir to the throne if all the other possibilities are done. Fundin, of course, Balin and Dwalin, who Balin is the one who heads back to try to retake Moria. Right? Is that correct?
Yeah. Balin's quest.
Yeah. Yeah. That's sort of a tragic for Balin. I was rooting for him.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So they finally do retake, and I think it's worth saying Moria was only the name. Basically, Moria for Khazad-dûm, Moria means black pit. which is what it became after Khazad-dûm basically died.
Yeah.
with the dwarves moving out and the orcs moving in. But more of that will be told in the story that we've got going on tonight.
Yay!
Yay! Super excited about that, by the way, that we are going to be playing. It's going to happen at 7 p.m. or 7-ish. It takes a while for us to make sure that everybody's on the same page and that we're ready to stream. So 7-ish tonight, we are going to be starting the Lord of the Rings, the Long Dark of Moria. And remind me the name of your character real quick.
Tora.
Tora, yes. And so, what is the lineage of Tora again?
Okay, so, you guys, so this does follow a bit of the lineage of, from the Rings of Power. So, in the Rings of Power, Durin the Fourth is married to Disa. I have them have 3 children. Gamli, which is a male, Gerda, a female, and Durin the Fifth. As we know, Durin the Fifth eventually, founds the line of Durin. But I have in my creativity created 2 other lines. So Gamli's line eventually leads westward and stays in the Blue Mountains with the dwarves of Belagost and Nogrod.
Right.
So with those Firebeards and Broadbeams. But the line of Disa kind of follows the line of Durin, eventually coming to live in Erebor and the Grey Mountains. And then when Gror leads Durin's folk from the Grey Mountains following the War of the Dwarves and Dragons, a little girl by the name of Hala is led with her parents out of the Grey Mountains into the Iron Hills. Hala begets Thel in the year 2670. Thel begets Torbera in 2759. And 40 years later, Torbera gets the epithet Thunder Shield as she fights at the young age of 40 at the Battle of Azanulbizar. And gains glory for her name, gaining that epithet. In 2880, Tora is born to Torbera. And then in 2941, Tora fights at the Battle of 5 Armies, seeking glory like her foremothers. But she's overpowered by the orcs and rendered unconscious on the field. Her cousin, Thorin III Stonehelm, who we just talked about, felled those orcs and brought her unconscious body to safety. And Tora is now ashamed of the lack of glory, of her weakness on the battlefield that day. And so now she is seeking, a sense of purpose, a sense of glory. And she has now traveled through the Mirkwood, through the Misty Mountains to the Blue Mountains to request her cousins, who descended from Gamli, one of the sons of Durin and Disa, to request their aid after the sons of Durin basically said, no, we're not going to Khazad-dûm with you.
we not going back in there.
Yeah. So Disa is now, not Disa. The line of Disa, the daughters of Disa, are requesting aid from the sons of Gamli as descendants of Durin and Disa. So I'm really excited, you guys. I'm really, really excited.
Amazing. It's going to be amazing. So we got to tell a little bit of the story to sort of set up some things with our session 0, but our session 1 tonight at 7 is going to set our characters on the pathway of of the reasons that they are headed towards Moria, Khazad-dûm, and to find what to find glory, maybe, for Torah, to find maybe something to eat for our hobbits, to find. No, just kidding. But it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm excited to play it. We've got a great group of people with us, and adding one more tonight, so we'll see how all that works as we're headed into it. But yes, super exciting. And I have reached the end of my time that I'm able to be with you. I don't know if you are going to continue on.
Yeah, I think I'm
yeah.
gonna wrap it up here as well.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, thank you, everybody who has been watching, everybody who's catching this podcast after the time. Please do like, subscribe, do all those things. And you can find us on Twitch every Monday. The Phoenix is here. I am here, the Kindly Cleric. Check out all our stuff as we do this every Monday. We just gave you, I mean, come on. We just spent... what, 2 hours, 3 hours?
3 hours.
We just spent 3 hours, and we got through not only preliminary things, but we did the entire history of the line of. I mean, there's stuff in there that's
brushed over.
there was a little hand waved over, but we went through the entire line of Durin.
You have all the tools now to watch a Moria campaign.
Yes.
And if you guys like what you guys are watching tonight, I have 2 plugs. The first plug being pick up Lord of the Rings role-playing for 5th edition by Free League Publishing. They create this Moria supplement, that campaign setting supplement that we will be playing through. But if you also like the Lore Master, the Kindly Cleric is a full-time professional dungeon master and has multiple amazing campaigns going. I think you've got City of Mist and Humblewood?
Yes, so I do. I have a City of Mist on Thursday at 8:00. If you're if you're just getting into TTRPGs and you want to try out a narrative system, you can check that out. Humblewood is obviously our cozy gaming, and that happens Saturday morning at 9 Eastern. So you can get in your robe and your coffee and come and join us for some cozy gaming.
Bring your parent cup.
Yeah, bring your parent cup. Yep. While the kiddies are asleep. Also, tonight after 7:00, after our broadcast is done at 10:30, we actually have a whole nother Lord of the Rings 5e. So if you want to jump in and you're a night owl like me or over on the East Coast, then you can definitely jump in on that one and play that one with us. We've got about 3 people that are going to be already joining us, but I love to have 6 at the table. So if you're interested in joining that, but she said professional dungeon master. I just call myself full-time dungeon master because setting the bar too high at professional, it might be a little much. But
I will plug and say you are very professional. So it is there's nothing wrong with saying with me saying at least that you're a professional.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. From the Kindly Cleric.
From the Phoenix.
We'll see you guys next time on Middle Earth Monday. Bye, everybody.